Hello and welcome to Say Hi to the Future, Ingenious Thinkers, a podcast aimed at highlighting the human side of ingenuity. With me today is Achille Ettorre, known for championing the value of big data, AI, analytics, and business intelligence, all of which inform strategic decision making. Achille is also a TEDx speaker and author of The Digital Advantage. Welcome to Say Hi to the Future.
Listen, Ken, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm excited to discuss the digital advantage AI and how AI impacts analytics.
So before we get going, I got to ask you an important question. My kids are all nearly 30 now, but when they were teens, they always told me I was irrelevant. Is that true? I mean, with AI, am I truly irrelevant? Like, were they right and it was just foreshadowing? Like, what's up with it?
That's an interesting question because my kids are 17 and 15. I violently disagree. I think without AI, we're always relevant. As they progress over the journey of life, they understand the wisdom and knowledge that we actually bring to the table as we continue to grow as you know, as you are a lifelong learner, so am I. I think AI helps bridge that gap quite quickly, though, given the innovation and how quickly it's moving into society.
You get a little bit of pushback though with AI, and maybe it's more of fear that's driving the pushback rather than the absolute technology. And I wonder if it's actually in the definition. The word intelligence means to acquire and apply knowledge. So it's a great sorter and an applier of what exists. Where humans and ingenuity, where we separate ourselves for today, clever, original, and inventive thinking. So are people thinking that AI is doing more than it is? Is that where the fear comes from? It will think for us, it will take our jobs on all levels.
I think you're correct in the fear comes from the loss of jobs and quite frankly the unknown. I mean, traditionally without AI, people are historically resistant to any type of change within organizations and your day-to-day life. Think of AI as a tool set to kind of increase your productivity and your ability to kind of do things better.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily view it as an opportunity or a way of losing jobs. I think it makes people more productive so they can do more meaningful work. I contrastly think that AI will create more jobs. We just don't know what those look like just yet. But it will eliminate the mundane routine jobs by automating that function.
How then does that help you make better decisions? Like, what is it in AI's function that helps free us up?
Well, I was working with a client a few weeks ago, and they wanted to understand their customer behavior or insights a little bit better. And they were in a situation where they used their data and had some type of analytical reporting to provide them information so they can make better decisions. This information was given to them once a day at the end of the day. So they were pretty proud of that. And we worked with them to get them information, not at the end of the day, but at the beginning of the day through an email that would be on their desk and available to them as soon as they woke up. The information is there. The heavy lifting that AI did in this instance was it was able to digest and provide the insights for the management team or the operator to make a decision on what they needed to do in real time, or quite frankly, they didn't have to wait till the end of the day to actually do their work and bring some of it home and do some rework if they were wrong with the decisions they make throughout the day.
So it sounds like it supports in two ways. One, well, obviously, in layman's terms, the ability to crunch more data more quickly. And I think that so many firms have so much knowledge that is buried. Is that something you see being brought to the forefront to help decision making?
I do, but it needs to be done strategically, and it can't be done. It has to be done. It has to be done a little bit over time, or distributed within the organization over time. As an example, I mean, mature organizations who have logs of process books and operational ways of handling things can easily integrate or create their own private GPT and have a chatbot that can, quite frankly, answer any of the questions that they're looking for. What AI can do is it can provide suggestions on how to A, do things better based on its prior knowledge, or B, you can close that loop even further to just hone in on certain geographical areas. So if I were to give you an example, if you're a hospital network and you work within 3 or 4 different hospital networks, and you're trying to understand what your patient flow is, well, you can quite easily input all your process books in a private GPT and understand what the criteria or the rules are for each particular hospital, and you can flow the patients in to the best serving hospital at any given time based on supply and demand. That's something that's not been done readily over the course of, I'll say, the last 5 to 10 years. But more and more, these multiple location hospital networks are using this to create that additional advantage for them.
Is AI only looking at the data, which data is obviously numerical, it's quantifiable, or is it also in this situation, does it look at the opinion, which is not data driven, which can be highly biased? Like, how do you separate those out?
That's hard. You need a framework, a criteria to take out these biases. And I actually mentioned a couple of ways that we've handled this in my book, in the Digital Advantage. I'll share one of them with you. I mean, any single AI model needs to be audited. And whether you're auditing it every day or you're reviewing if there's an inherent bias once a week, it needs to be done by individuals that are non-binary to the particular outcome and just
Mhm.
reviewing it to make sure that the opinions or the suggestions that AI provides, whatever recommendations those may be, are actually valid and are not biased in any way. One way that it could be biased is if you have all of your information or all of your opinions doctrined by one specific group. And not that that group is right or wrong, but sometimes they would write their paper or do their publications in such a way that would benefit them or the actual people that fund them.
Mhm. One of the things that I teach my students around business strategy, and I do it because, and that's the difference between fact and opinion. And I mentioned this quickly. And I think it's so critical in business to understand the difference that if you are presenting a fact, it is numerical, it's quantifiable, it's real.
Mhm.
There's no alternate facts. It's not possible in business.
Yeah,
Opinion, to me, in business, needs to be founded in fact because we've read this number 100 times. I'm believing that we should go in this sort of, approach or this way. And I double down on that in business because there's shareholder value, there's a company's value, there's customers, and we can tank a business very quickly if we don't know how to separate the two. Is there a way then to simply use AI to look at pure data? Should it only be used like that now until we can figure out the true, removal of bias?
I think that if you only use it for data, the evolution and the innovation may not be something that you can benefit from. So I'll give you an example. I work with an organization to build AI agents for their particular company to help hire people. The fundamental of the model works like this. You provide a job description with a bunch of questions, and you would scour the internet, mainly Indeed in this situation, and
Hmm.
you're able to review about 400 to 500 applications and rank them accordingly. I can tell you that that process there, any doctor or anyone that is really deep in understanding how working LLMs are or NLPs work, they can definitely find flaws with a lot of the approaches and decisions that the AI model will make. But I can also tell you in that same example, if I were doing the hiring and I'm looking for the very best,
Hmm.
having someone or an agent review 500 criteria, actually interview the top 50%, 250 candidates,
Hmm.
and provide me with, say, top 10, top three, best 15. I think that's very powerful. And if you were to only look at the data, I'm not necessarily sure that you would get to the place that you would get to if you were to provide the intuitive part, the opinion part, the actual decision-making part that the AI tool provides. But that's based on the criteria that you put in yourself.
Right.
Um, so that's a pretty advanced example, but the power of that is very profound in terms of being able to get the best candidates for your business versus what's happening today.
No, that makes sense. And you know what? I push for a number of reasons. One, because I want people to understand when they're presenting the difference between a fact and opinion.
Mhm.
And I hope that that helps them work with AI when they develop questions or they interpret answers. I just think it's so critical today to start understanding those differences. And I also, and you talked to bias, I push so hard in our process on empathy, macro trends, and barriers, but I focus on the bias barrier. I think for my practice, people can figure out where the bottleneck is or where the barrier is in manufacturing and import and in shipping, whatever, supply chain, excuse me. It's so hard to start looking at all the levels of bias. And I think that that is impacted or impacts business decision making as much as anything today.
And listen, you're not wrong. I mean, that is something that's very real. Um, but having a lens or a framework that, looks at how transparent the model is, that is explainable.
Hmm.
Because sometimes, when you use these models, they'll spew out something on their own and they go off to left field. And this is early days.
Right.
And the audit part of it, I believe, always requires human intervention. I think the supervision, the ownership of the model belongs with some type of human insight or
Hmm.
intervention. And I think the tool should provide the operator or the individual the ability to make better decisions on the information and suggestions that it provides. I mean, quite frankly, I would suggest that, and I talk about this in execution of the book, where the reality is this is another level of people, process, and technology
Hmm.
working together, and it's different depending on the level of maturity of a particular organization or an individual. You will always have to invest in people to understand how to catch biases. You'll have to invest in people on how to refine the models or audit the models. You can't just build something and let it go.
Right.
That is a recipe for disaster.
So are these some of the things that you teach us or explain to us for the digital advantage?
I'll tell you this, I mean, I do my best job in sharing what my experiences are and formalizing it in the book to say, this is what I suggest, and this has been my experience. But I have to tell you, Ken, as I'm doing, some speaking engagements, working with different clients, I'm learning quite a bit. The book is almost like a starting point that provides good conversation, depending on whatever it is you're doing within a given day or a given assignment.
Well, I'll pick up on two things there. Yes, the book really is a starting point. I remember when I did, people say, how do you get your ideas? And it was always from listening. And from the first book, to your point, you get to speak to so many people in so many countries. There's probably 1,000 books of ideas that you pick up, and it's learning and sharing that conversation. So it's a wonderful process, and I'm glad to hear you, listening and sharing. And I'm sure you've got digital advantage too already in your mind somewhere. More specifically, you talked about the conversations and the questions. What do you hear and where do you start? Like if I'm going to read this, where do I start in the process or in approaching, AI?
I think, quite frankly, I would start off at a basic level. I would literally start off at a basic level and build from that. The book will definitely talk about, different things with respect to privacy, cybersecurity, how to handle yourself in a board. My experiences generally tend to lie on retail and construction, supply chain. But on its onset, once people understand the impact that this technology or this tool will have on mankind moving forward, then they could kind of sit back and see how they'll facilitate it within their own lives. Because this is not a technology that's just in your organization.
Hmm.
It'll move out into your own day-to-day life. I mean, you can plan out your vacations, as I'm sure a lot of people have heard, and it does quite a great job at suggesting different avenues or different places to vacation with your family. And I think you start off like that, and then you move into the more advanced stages or the more advanced pieces, which, quite frankly, aren't as advanced or aren't as hard if you build that foundation.
Hmm.
And I talk about that when I talk about technology. The hardest part is the culture. And the hardest part is what approach you will take on this. I mean, you can be the fear monger that's saying, "Oh my God, everything's going to come to an end." And listen, yes, it is a dangerous technology if put in the wrong people's hand. It is powerful enough to do those types of things.
Hmm.
But I'd like to look at AI for good, right? I'd look to
Right.
see that, how can this improve our lives? How can this get us how can this help us solve diseases so that we live longer, how we live a better life, how the quality of our lives becomes more meaningful. And I think if you take those three pillars and do that every day and it becomes a part of your day to day, I think the limits are endless with this type of technology.
So the limits are endless, but again, let's focus a little bit on that first step in introducing it. Maybe breaking down the fear. Is there a way through your workshops or your work that you help companies understand in that first meeting, how one supports the other?
I wish I could tell you that I could do it in one meeting. The truth is, the first meeting is all about listening. And once we listen and actually write down what the opportunities are within the particular organization, the themes are always the same. It's like the science. The science hasn't changed. It's always been here.
Hmm.
Now it's how do we embed it in the organization in such a way that, we don't have the resistance or bias from the actual staff. How do we look at data silos, which is a common theme as well? Nothing that's done I shouldn't say nothing done inherently. Sometimes it is done strategically, but how do we open up that avenue so that, you know, we can use AI to its full impact? You need leadership buy-in. I mean, AI is nothing unless it's coming from your leadership or supported by the boardroom. They need to understand not everything that encompasses AI, but this is a tool that could probably help them do better. And if they don't think that, I'm pretty sure their competition is. That's where I provide actionable advice. And I'll tell you, I never say that I can solve everything because I can't. But you sit down and chart a path on these are the particular things that I can tell you that I have done. And if we methodically work through these things, whether yourself or with any type of specific group, over time, you'll get better. And this is where I like to talk about getting better 1% every day, as opposed to here's your step. Here's the solution, here it is. You chunk it in and you're done. That's hardly ever the case.
I love that. Getting 1% better every day. What an amazing way to look at it. Tell me more about that and how, because that to me is an amazing cultural pillar if you can get people to buy into that.
Understanding that adoption is hard to begin with. Looking at how the AI or the solution will help make someone's job better or their life easier requires an investment in people and training. And the
Hmm.
training is not going out for a day and solving all the problems. The training needs to be embedded in such a way where, every day you may have a huddle. Every day you may have an actual item where you do something for that particular week. Maybe you change a KPI. Maybe you let
Hmm.
AI create the actual report or the KPI for you, and you line it up with what you're currently using. The majority of the time, you get two pillars. One is, oh my God, I can't believe I've been doing it in such a way for so long. And you get buy-in right away. That's the best. But the second part of it is you may get challenges because what the AI is recommending may be faster, may or may not be better, but it's not useful. And it's not
Right.
useful because whatever the criteria may or may not be, maybe needs to be tweaked. Or the individual may require more training. The problem that they're solving is not a one layer problem with a solution. It requires multi steps. And you sit down and you go back and you chart out what your process is. And AI may not be able to solve the entire process. Let's be clear. But if it can do the heavy lifting for half of that process, you're still ahead of the game. But charting out that path and really understanding what your data points that are coming in, making sure that your processes are all tightly knit, and then spending more time on actual decision making or understanding what options are available to you, I think is always the best way to go about it.
So, Achille, when you actually make understanding AI quite easy, and you did it for me with a notion of two pillars. Can you tell me a little bit more about these two pillars, the sort of the revelations that come from them, and how you get organizations to get there to understand them?
Well, that's a big question, and I can tell you this. For me, when I sit down with any enterprise, whether it's a larger enterprise or smaller, the first thing we do is we sit down and we get a sense of where they lie on their maturity level with understanding AI. And with that, we also sit down and look at what their latest strategy is on how their go-to-market is formulated in terms of what they're projected versus how they're doing. That gives me a sense of what type of opportunities are available to this organization versus just saying AI can fix anything.
Hmm.
The themes that I look at quite closely once I get that understanding is through people and process. The success of any organization really aligns with understanding with the current skill set that you have, can they deliver on what it is that you're going to do? A lot of times I can tell you that's going to require some type of reskilling. And so I make those recommendations based on where we think we're at. The second part of that, and it takes a little bit longer, is understanding your processes. And understanding your processes from when data is first ingested into your ERP system, if you have one, to when it actually provides an actual insight, whether it's through POS or through a reporting system. We take those processes and we refine them. When we refine them, we underlay that with what type of technology would be used to help provide the business the information, the actionable insights it would need so that it can repeat and rinse day in and day out.
So when I listen to one, thank you for that. And when I listen to it, they must go through this unbelievable transformation from, what they thought was real or doable to what actually is real or doable, and probably, say, oh my God, how did I ever think of the world like that in the first place?
Listen, you're absolutely right. I mean, the art of the possible is part of that, and understanding what the art of the possible is when it comes from the actual organization to them seeing that is actually attainable, maybe not at 100%, but some of the things are attainable with the current tools that are in place. It not only provides excitement, it gives that a spark. It increases the culture in such a way that everybody embraces it.
I love that. The art of the possible. What a simple way to explain to people and even break down the barriers. It's not that you're doing it wrong, but the possibilities of how you can now do it are so much different. Thank you for that. So, art of the possible, let's look at, you talk about data-driven future. At the beginning, you talked a little bit about it's not just about ourselves or our team, it's the world around us. What's a data-driven future look like? I mean, for our world and about.
Well, I listen, I think in this day and age you have to be proactive. The proactive organization that embraces this type of innovation and this type of learning environment are the ones that are going to be rewarded because they'll be that further ahead. Personalization is huge. I mean, I think that's the arms race with all of this. Everyone is looking at how they can get to the final mile or to that final customer. AI provides the ability not only to understand your customer, but to get to that final customer and increase your basket no matter what business you're in. There's a big part of this that is going to require responsible AI, and all that is some type of ethical model or oversight, so that whatever it is that you're doing is is done in such a way that it's above board. Um, you really want to have the framework or the governance around how it is that you're using these tools, so that it's not only right for the business, but it's also right for people. And the last thing, we talk about AI and we talk about we talk about what it can do, and we talk about training humans, and I think the reality is human AI collaboration in all these instances, there is a human tied to this type of AI. And like I said in the beginning, whether the oversight is a review every day of what the output is and with respect to the model, or it's a group that reviews the framework, so that the model is transparent, the ability to limit the bias is taken out at the beginning or at some stage where it becomes too late. And the future is exciting. It's an exciting time because this technology is just starting, and the impact that it's had on so many different levels. We've never had anything like this, I don't believe. And I just think it's going to move faster and get better for everyone.
Well, let's just say hi to the future, and I love that thought, Achille. It's time goes quickly. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. We've been talking to Achille Ettorre, known for championing big data, AI, analytics, and business intelligence. And Achille, the digital advantage. Where can I find it to read it?
Well, it's going to be on Amazon shortly. You can find it on my webpage, achilleettorre.com. Subscribe to my newsletter. You can find me on LinkedIn, and you can grab your copy so we can dive deeper.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This was great.